You know how sometimes you stumble across something that just, well, makes you rethink how you see things?
Hmm.
Today's kind of one of those days. We're diving into what might seem like two completely separate worlds, mathematics and writing.
Yeah, numbers and narratives, logic, language seems quite different on the surface.
Exactly. But what if? What if they're more connected than we generally think?
That's the really fascinating question we're digging into today. And we've got a great guide, a very comprehensive piece of research.
Okay.
It's a meta-analysis published just last year, October 2024, in the Educational Psychology Review.
Right.
It's titled, Are Mathematics and Writing Skills Related? Evidence from Meta-Analysis.
And a meta-analysis, that's where they combine lots of studies, yeah.
Precisely. It's powerful because it doesn't just rely on one set of findings. It pulls together results from a huge number, in this specific case, 211 different studies.
Wow, 211.
And get this, involving over 1.2 million participants.
1.2 million. That's enormous.
Yeah.
That gives a pretty robust picture, I'd imagine.
It certainly aims to. It gives us a much broader and hopefully clearer view than any single study could.
Okay, so with all that data, what was the core question they were trying to answer?
Well, fundamentally, they wanted to know, is there a genuine, measurable link between someone's math skills and their writing skill?
Right.
And importantly, if a link does exist, what factors might influence it, make it stronger or weaker?
So not just a simple yes or no. They're looking for the nuances.
Exactly. It's about understanding the relationship in more detail.
Okay, so for everyone listening, our mission here today is basically to give you the highlight reel from all that research.
Uh-huh.
We're going to pull out the key insights from this massive study, sort of a shortcut, so you can grasp this connection without wading through, well, hundreds of academic papers yourself.
So that's the plan, a deep dive without drowning in the data.
Love it.
Yeah.
So where do we start? What did this huge analysis find overall about the math-writing relationship?
Okay, the big picture finding is this. They found a moderate positive correlation overall.
Moderate positive correlation.
Yeah, the statistical value they reported, the R value, was 0.48. 0.48.
Okay, 0.48. Now, for those of us maybe not swimming in stats every day, what does moderate correlation actually, mean in practical terms?
Good question. Think of correlation on a scale maybe from 0 to 1. 0 means absolutely no connection. 1 means they're perfectly in sync.
Right.
So 0.48. It's not near 0, but it's also not super close to 1. It suggests a noticeable trend.
Noticeable.
Yeah, it's not this overwhelmingly strong deterministic link, but it's definitely more than just, random chance or a weak coincidence.
So generally speaking, if someone's better at math, they also tend, on average, to be somewhat better at writing,
Right.
and vice versa.
That's what a moderate positive correlation like 0.48 suggests, yes, to a meaningful extent.
Okay, that's interesting right off the bat. Maybe challenges some common assumptions.
It might. But here's where, for me at least, it gets really fascinating. The study didn't just stop at the overall picture. It broke down how this relationship changes developmentally across different grade levels.
Ah, okay. So does it stay the same for kids versus adults? What do they find there?
Well, this is where some perhaps surprising patterns popped up. They found the connection between math and writing was actually strongest in the early school years.
Really? How early?
We're talking pre-kindergarten up to about grade 2. In that group, the correlation was 0.52.
0.52. So even slightly stronger than the overall average.
Exactly. But here's the twist. That link seemed to diminish as students got older.
Diminish. How so?
By the time individuals reached university level and beyond, the correlation had dropped quite significantly, down to 0.30. 0.3.
Wow, 0.52 down to 0.30. That's a big difference. Why? Why would it be stronger when kids are younger?
Any theories?
The researchers suggest a few possibilities for this kind of waxing and waning effect.
Waxing and waning, I like that. Yeah. In those early grades, think about it, kids are undergoing really rapid development in foundational skills across the board.
True. Learning everything at once, almost.
Right. Basic number sense, counting, simple arithmetic. And at the very same time, they're learning the absolute basics of writing, forming letters, spelling simple words, putting basic sentences together.
Okay.
So the idea is that perhaps these very fundamental building blocks for both math and writing rely on some of the same underlying cognitive abilities.
Like shared mental muscles.
Kind of, yeah. And those shared abilities might be developing really quickly and concurrently during that early period, making the skills appear more tightly linked.
That makes a lot of sense. They're building the shared foundation simultaneously.
Hmm.
But then why does it weaken later on? Why the drop to 0.30 in university?
Well, as students move through school and into higher education or careers, the skills required in both math and writing tend to become much more specialized.
Ah, specialization.
Yeah. People develop deeper expertise in specific areas. Those shared foundational skills that were maybe crucial early on might become less of a bottleneck, you know?
Less of a limiting factor.
Exactly. More specific, domain-related expertise starts to dominate. Think about, say, a theoretical mathematician versus a poet.
Very different skill sets, mostly.
Right. The mathematician might be using highly abstract logic that doesn't rely much on, say, crafting flowing prose.
Mm-hmm.
And the poet might not need advanced calculus day to day. Their paths diverge.
So it's like, imagine two young plants growing side by side. Their roots all tangled together initially, but as they grow taller, their main branches reach out in completely different directions.
That's a fantastic analogy that captures the idea really well.
Did they look at the in-between stages, like elementary or high school?
They did. For upper elementary, grades 3 to 6, the correlation was 0.42, 0.42. Still moderate.
Okay, so a slight drop from the earliest grades, but still higher than university.
Correct. And interestingly, they noted that for middle and high school students, the correlation wasn't statistically significantly different from those primary grades in the overall analysis. The really pronounced drop seemed to happen between high school and the university at adult level.
Got it. So development stage is clearly a big factor. Now, you mentioned specialization. Did the study look within math and writing, like at different types of skills?
Yes, absolutely. This is another key part of their analysis. They differentiated between what they termed lower order and higher order skills in both domains.
Lower order and higher order. Okay, break that down for us. What's the difference?
Sure. Lower order skills are essentially the fundamentals, the more basic, often mechanical abilities.
Like?
In math, think basic arithmetic computation, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, just doing the calculation accurately.
The mechanics.
And in writing, lower order would include things like spelling correctly, using proper punctuation, handwriting legibility, or even just basic typing fluency.
Got it. Foundational stuff. So higher order must be the more complex things.
Exactly. Higher order skills involve applying those basics in more complex ways. In math, that means things like understanding and solving word problems.
Ah, the dreaded word problem.
Yeah, indeed. Also, applying math concepts, interpreting data, mathematical reasoning.
And for writing?
Higher order writing involves composing coherent texts, structuring arguments, developing ideas, overall write-in quality, clarity, organization, that sort of thing.
So moving from just calculating or spelling correctly to actually using those skills to solve problems or communicate complex ideas.
Precisely, going from the how to the why and what.
Okay, so they looked at correlations between these different levels, like lower math with lower writing, higher math with higher writing, etc.
They did, and while the overall analysis pooling all grade levels didn't find a huge difference between correlations involving lower versus higher order skills, when they drilled down into specific grade levels and looked at specific pairings like lower math with lower writing or higher math with higher writing, some really interesting patterns emerged again.
Okay, now I'm intrigued again. Spill the beans. What patterns?
All right, well, let's go back to those crucial primary grades again, pre-K to grade 2, where the overall link was strongest.
Yeah.
The strongest specific relationship they found there was actually between lower order writing skills and lower order mathematics skills.
The fundamentals linking most tightly.
Seems so. The correlation was 0.59, 0.59. That's quite strong, linking basic arithmetic with basic spelling and handwriting in those early years.
0.59. Wow. That really points to that shared foundational development, doesn't it?
It really does seem to. But what's also interesting is that even the higher order skills showed a pretty substantial link back then. Higher order writing and higher order math in primary grades had a correlation of 0.48. 0.48.
So even the early stages of problem solving and composition were quite related back then, too.
Yep. Yes, suggesting that common foundation supports both the basics and the early steps into more complex applications.
Okay, but we know the overall link weakened later. What happened to these specific pairings, lower with lower, higher with higher at the university level, where the overall correlation dropped to 0.30?
Right. This is where that divergence, that separation we talked about, becomes really clear in the subskills.
How so?
For university students and adults, the correlation between the lower order skills, basic writing mechanics, and basic math computation was still present. It was 0.37. 0.37.
Okay, so still some link there in the fundamentals, though weaker than in primary.
Correct. But the link between higher order writing and higher order mathematics, that dropped much lower. It was only 0.25, with 0.25 at the university level.
0.25. Well, that's considered a pretty weak correlation in most social sciences, right?
It is. It suggests that by adulthood, the connection between complex writing abilities and complex mathematical abilities is much less pronounced.
That's really thought-provoking. The basics still share some ground, but the advanced applications really seem to go their separate ways. Any thoughts on why that specific divergence in higher order skills happens?
It likely comes back to that specialization idea. The cognitive processes involved in, say, advanced mathematical proof versus crafting nuanced literary criticism might just become very distinct.
Different kinds of thinking.
Possibly. Both require high-level cognition, obviously, but the nature of that cognition, the specific reasoning patterns, the knowledge base they draw on, might just diverge significantly as expertise deepens in one area or the other.
Okay, that makes sense. So the relationship depends on age, and it depends on the type of skill, lower or higher order. Did anything else influence the connection they saw? What about how the skills were measured?
Good point. Yes, the meta-analysis also considered characteristics of the assessments themselves, the tests, the assignments used in the original 211 studies.
What kind of characteristics?
They looked at a couple of key aspects. One was the reliability of the measures. Basically, how consistent and accurate is the test?
Right. Does it measure the same thing consistently?
Exactly. And the other thing they looked at, specifically for writing, was whether the tasks were normed and standardized. Meaning they've been administered to a large representative group of people, so you have benchmarks and average scores to compare against. Think standardized tests like the SAT or GRE writing sections, perhaps.
Okay. And did these assessment features matter? Did reliability or standardization affect the math writing correlation?
They did seem to. For math assessments, they found that higher reliability, more precise, consistent measurement was associated with a stronger correlation with writing skills.
That seems logical. If your math measure is fuzzy, it's hard to see how it relates clearly to anything else, right?
Precisely. It's like comparing a blurry photo to a clear one. Harder to see the match.
Makes sense. What about the writing assessments? Did standardization matter there?
Yes. Writing tasks that were normed and standardized showed a stronger correlation with mathematics skills compared to writing assessments that were, say, more informal or classroom-specific without those benchmarks.
Huh. Why might that be?
Well, one interpretation could be that these broader, more formal, standardized writing tests might do a better job of tapping into those shared underlying cognitive skills we've been discussing, things like reasoning, organization, vocabulary used across contexts.
Compared to maybe a very specific creative writing task.
Perhaps. Standardized tests often aim for broad applicability, which might align them more closely with the general cognitive abilities also used in math.
Interesting. So we've got age, skill type, and assessment characteristics all playing a role. Now, circling back to the why, the study did suggest reasons for this link existing at all, right? The underlying stuff.
Yes, they touched upon the likely candidates. The thinking is that the relationship probably stems from shared cognitive resources.
Those mental muscles again.
Yeah, fundamental mental ability is crucial for both domains. They highlighted things like executive functions, things like working memory, holding information in mind, attention control, planning, organization.
Okay. Essential for both complex math and structured writing.
Definitely. Also, language skills are key. Vocabulary, understanding sentence structure, semantic processing, that's obviously core to writing, but it's also increasingly recognized as important for understanding math concepts and especially word problems.
True. You have to understand the language to understand the math problem.
And then there are those higher order thinking skills like logical reasoning, problem-solving strategies, abstract thinking. Both fields demand that at higher levels.
So if someone is strong or maybe weaker in these core cognitive areas, it could show up in both their math and writing performance.
That's the underlying theory, yes. It helps explain why we often see students who seem to excel across different academic areas, or conversely, struggle in multiple subjects. There might be common underlying factors at play.
Okay, so putting this all together, what are the potential implications? What should we take away from this? Keeping in mind, as you said, it's correlation, not causation.
Absolutely. That's the crucial caveat. We can't definitively say from this study that teaching math better causes better writing, or vice versa.
Right.
However, the findings do strongly hint that maybe we should think about math and writing education in a more integrated way.
Integrated. How so?
Well, given that they seem to draw on these shared cognitive foundations, especially early on, perhaps there are benefits to approaches that don't treat them as completely separate silos.
Are there examples of what that might look like? Does the research point to anything specific?
Actually, yes. The meta-analysis references another study. I think it was Arsenal and colleagues from 2024.
Okay.
They found that specific instruction focused on mathematics writing, getting students to explain their mathematical reasoning in writing, justifying their answers.
Like showing your work, but in sentences.
Kind of, yeah, but perhaps more elaborate, explaining the why behind the steps. Anyway, they found this type of instruction was linked to positive outcomes, not just in the quality of the students' math writing itself, but also in their actual mathematical understanding.
Oh, that's really interesting. So writing about math helped them understand the math better.
That's what their findings suggested. The act of articulating the mathematical thinking seemed to deepen the conceptual grasp.
That makes intuitive sense. Explaining something forces you to organize your thoughts about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's the potential disconnect. Is this kind of math writing instruction common practice?
I suspect maybe not everywhere.
Well, the meta-analysis also points to different research, Powell and others from 2021, which found something quite telling.
What was that?
They reported that less than half of K-12 educators surveyed in the U.S. said they regularly include math writing in their teaching.
Less than half. So there seems to be a gap between what some research suggests could be beneficial integrating writing into math and what's actually happening on the ground in many classrooms.
It certainly highlights a potential area for development, yeah. A potential missed opportunity, perhaps, to leverage that connection.
Definitely something for educators and curriculum designers to think about. Now, before we wrap up the findings, were there any factors the study looked at that, surprisingly, didn't seem to significantly affect the math writing link?
Yes, a couple of things stood out as not being significant moderators in the main analysis. For instance, the geographical region comparing studies done in the US and Canada versus other parts of the world didn't show a significant difference in the overall correlation strength.
So the link seems fairly universal, geographically speaking.
Based on this analysis, yes. However, one factor that did show a difference was the language of assessment.
Oh, how so?
The correlation between math and writing tended to be stronger in studies using English language assessments compared to those using other languages.
That's curious. Any idea why?
The meta-analysis didn't provide a definitive reason, it just noted the finding. It could be due to various factors related to the specific tests used, cultural aspects of education, or linguistic structures. It's flagged as something needing more research.
Interesting. Anything else that doesn't have a big impact?
Yes, the publication status. Whether the study was a published journal article or an unpublished dissertation didn't significantly change the overall results in their main model.
Okay, so the findings seem pretty robust regardless of publication bias concerns, at least in this analysis. Good to know.
Yeah, adds a bit more confidence to the overall picture.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize this for everyone listening. This deep dive into this huge meta-analysis really provides compelling evidence, wouldn't you say, for a genuine connection between math and writing skills.
I'd agree. Compelling evidence, yes. It's not a perfect one-to-one relationship, obviously, but that moderate positive link overall seems quite solid.
And it's a dynamic relationship, isn't it? It clearly changes based on age or developmental stage.
Definitely. And also depends on the specific type of skills we're looking at, those foundational lower order versus the more complex higher order ones.
And even how we measure them matters.
Right. The reliability and standardization of the assessments play a role too.
That finding about the stronger link in the early grades, especially between the foundational skills, that really sticks with me.
Me too. That R = 0.59 between lower order math and lower order writing in pre-K2, it really paints a picture of those basic cognitive and motor skills developing in tandem.
Yeah, building that shared base.
And then that subsequent divergence, particularly for the higher order skills by university level, falling to R = 0.25, that also tells an important story about specialization and perhaps how the cognitive demands of advanced work in different fields become more distinct.
It really makes you reflect on your own experiences or observations of how people develop, doesn't it? Do some people stay strong in both? Do most tend to specialize?
It certainly invites that kind of reflection.
Okay, so considering all these connections, all these nuances that this research has brought to light, maybe here's a final thought, a provocation for our listeners to mull over.
Right.
Given these shared foundations, especially early on, and the finding that writing about math might even help math learning, what are the potential benefits we might be missing out on by not exploring more integrated approaches to teaching and learning math and writing?
Hmm. That's a powerful question.
Could focusing more deliberately on those shared underlying skills, the executive functions, the language components, the reasoning, especially in those crucial early years, actually boost learning across both domains?
It feels like a real possibility worth exploring, doesn't it? Moving beyond seeing them as just separate columns on a report card.
Exactly. Could more integrated teaching unlock potential we aren't currently tapping into? That seems like a really interesting avenue for educators, researchers, and maybe even parents to consider.
A great point to ponder. It challenges us to think more holistically about learning and cognition.
Well, thanks for navigating this deep dive with us today. Hopefully it's given everyone listening a fresh perspective on the perhaps surprising connections between mathematics and writing.
Hope so too. It was fascinating to discuss.
Until our next exploration, keep those curious minds working.